All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, and there's Jamie Noodles McLennan somewhere in the eastern United States. We never quite know where Noodles is.
You never know where I am, eh?
You never have any clue where you are.
Jamie, but I don't know what's been leaked, but I'd just like to apologize for what happened yesterday. Jonas and Bryan, they were talking in terms of they had no business about certain goalies, this and that. I tried to hold the fort together, and that's all I can say. That's all I'm going to say. Hayes had a take on Vasilevsky. Jonas talked about Shesterkin. It was crazy, and I tried to just temper things, and I said, you guys just wait until he comes back. So Friday, I think Jonas is coming back, and we're going to get to the bottom of everything.
Let me guess. Joseph Woll's better than both of them. Is that what you're saying? Is that basically what
I don't think he
said?
went that far, but he did take a little jab at Vasilevsky. And listen, I didn't love the Evans goal last night. You know, it was a little kind of a flutter. I don't even know how to describe that. He got it off quick, and I
didn't like the Stankoven goal the other night either.
Didn't love that. Yeah, didn't love that.
Happens. You know what? Goalies allow bad goals sometimes. It happens.
Don't yell at me. I didn't say anything.
Yeah, Jonas, man. He came on this show, and he lit this show on. It wasn't even Hayes. It was all Jonas.
All Jonas. He believes that Vasilevsky is a complete stiff and should no longer be taken seriously in the National Hockey League.
Hey, I think we could all agree. I think we could all agree on one thing as far as Vasilevsky. There are some goals going in that didn't used to go in on him. I don't even know if that's opinion. That's kind of just fact. You see a goal go in, you're like, that guy just had everything. He used to have everything, and now some stuff sliding by him.
Yeah, I mean, I still think if I'm taking one goalie, that's the guy. I mean, Hellebuck, Vasilevsky, Shesterkin. I watched Shesterkin last night. I mean, I think he made one tough save. Ottawa had no juice last night. Shesterkin was more interested in fighting Tkachuk and, going crazy there. He was, it got emotional near the end. It was. But, I mean, I still think there's a Mount Rushmore. There's a 4 or 5 pack that I love. Vasilevsky's still in there. You can't have your best season every year, but boy, I'll take that guy when it's needed, and when he is at the top of his game. I don't.
Noodles. It's also a tribute to the trees that they had back there in front of them. You know what I mean? And when the trees start dropping, like guys start disappearing and going to other teams, you notice it back there. When you're plugging in younger guys, just guys that are not experienced, not big, tall dudes, and the goaltender realizes it. You know it.
Yeah, I mean that's why they probably. I mean their top 3 are what? Hedman, McDonough, Chernak. I mean, those are trees. They just, I like the Radish kid. Like I like Tampa Bay. They've lost a few in a row here. I think their schedule's been tough, but I still think they're a top tier team in the East. But you know what? You got to prove it.
They've come back to the pack. That's the amazing thing. Like you got Columbus here tonight, and you look at it. Columbus is in the race, and Boston and Tampa and Montreal won again last night. And they've won 2 straight since that kind of debacle on Saturday night where they had the Leafs and they let it get away from them. And Ottawa obviously is still in the hunt. They're still, I believe, technically in a playoff spot, even though they lost last night. And they're having issues scoring goals. They've been shut out with 3 of the last 7, I believe Ottawa is. But it's going to be a race. I mean, we talked about it earlier this week, I guess it was, or late last week. I think on Monday, where we said it felt like the page was turned, and all of a sudden everyone recognizes, okay, it's really go time now. Like, we're into the second half, and you better start picking things up. Sheldon Keefe, again, I guess, stopped practice today and started snapping on his team because Jersey's starting to lose some ground here, and they're trying to keep up, and they want to hold on to their positioning. But look at that East. I feel like we're going to do it every single day the rest of the way.
We are.
Like, every day it's going to be a jockeying for position, and as of today, it's 5 teams from the Atlantic. And as of this time next week, it could be 5 teams from the Metro, and things are going to really fluctuate a lot. And that's the craziness about a night like last night where Montreal ends up beating Tampa in regulation. That's big, right? Really, really big. And they beat the Rangers in reg. That was big, like to hold them off and hold off the points and not allow those other teams to get it. And, you got obviously Ottawa losing. You've got a lot going on, man. Every single night, it's pretty fun, and we're into mid-January. We need it, right? Because you got to start turning the page.
And Hayes, I said at the beginning of the season, and you always say it, like, it is a sprint. Like a sprint to get to places where Toronto and Washington and Carolina are. Like, you got to go on an absolute heater as soon as the ref drops the puck at the beginning of the season to get any kind of breathing room whatsoever. Like, look at the teams that have somebody breathing down their net. You just saw the list. That's insane.
Right.
But the thing is down the stretch, you have a 5-game losing streak or a 5-game winning streak. That could be the difference. Honestly,
you're screwed.
That's the point. And the team I watched last night, that Ranger team is 6-0-3 in their last 9. Like, just, quietly, that's things are starting to fall together for them.
Is that Shesterkin that's doing that? I mean, he said he wasn't testing much last night, but
yeah, like I think they had 20 shots. Like, it wasn't. He made one big glove save on Tkachuk in the second period. Outside of that, he could have played in a lawn chair. They just didn't have much. Like, Ottawa had no juice.
Yeah.
That's 3 games in 4 nights for them and travel, and they get 1 day off today. Now they got 3 games in 4 nights again. Like, schedule's catching up to them. But like, if I was looking at it, a lot of teams have had the heavy part of their schedule either through the start of the season, the middle of the season. Ottawa's is the middle of the season. They had the 9-game road trip, came home for 1, back out on the road for 2, home for 1, back out on the road. Like, they got a ton of a ton of home games down the stretch. If you look at it, the LA Kings play their 18th home game tonight. Like, they played 18 home games. The Leafs, this is their 29th home game.
Yeah, they got a ton of games on the road coming up.
A ton of games coming up. They play 1 more game next week. I was looking at it just, for balance of schedule, and the Leafs play 1 more game at home before they go out east or whatever, or out west, before the break. They'll have played 30 home games, and then so they got 12 the rest of the season. So there's a lot of road and some travel for them. Whereas, there are other teams that have played like 26, 27, or 25, 26 on the road, and they get the lion's share of home games. Now, you still have to win those games. Like, it doesn't matter. There's nothing guaranteed, but strength of schedule comes into factor in some of these races that we are going to see down the stretch, including the Eastern Conference.
Well, what's intriguing about where the Leafs are at, and again, they're kind of out of that rat race right now, but you lose 3 or 4 in a row, you can get dragged back into it, is the fact that they play so many teams in the West. Those 3-point games don't mean as much either, right?
Yep.
Like, you're going to see when divisional teams play, like tomorrow night, Ottawa and Boston. I think off the record, both teams would say, why don't we start in overtime? We'll fight for an extra point. Like, let's guarantee we each get a point, and let's fight for the extra one. I would take that gamble. Like, I would accept that deal if I had that opportunity. Executive order. If I could step in and sign one, give me a 3-point game every single night. Because, that at least allows you to stay in the race and keep chipping away.
Yeah, you're collecting something.
You're guaranteed to collect something. Where with the Leafs, if you're playing all these teams in the West, and that's what they have left, because they have to go through Western Canada, they go to California, they go through Vegas and Colorado and Utah and all that. Those are all teams that are in the Western Conference that don't factor into their race and their races. Which is also kind of a unique element to how you project what's going to happen with them the rest of the way. But it's
pretty interesting to see. And
Boston's
on the road in Jersey tonight against Sheldon Keefe's group. Like, so it's every night there's somebody in the Atlantic playing, and your scoreboard watching. Like, Florida is actually out west right now, right? Because they're in LA tonight. They played in Anaheim last night. That's a team, like, they're doing their Western swing just before this Four Nations.
That's right.
What do we call it? Face-off?
Four Nations face-off.
Sheldon Keefe snapping in practice. That's like practice. That's concerning, where it's like, how many times you see him snap at Leafs practice? Probably not a lot.
Couldn't over the music. Now there's no music.
No music. Now you can really get loud.
Can you imagine? I still we'll go back. Can you imagine if they're like, we're not changing Chief, you're taking over everything. You can do whatever you want, but the music stays at practice. Could you imagine,
Dude. Well, Noodles, there was some times where they had gruesome losses, like just 5-1, no energy, no life. And Mark Masters would send out a tweet, just music and skills development today for the Leafs. And I was like, holy God.
Pretty good living, man, if you can get it. Pretty good lifestyle.
Look, and not that you need to be skated into the ground with how many games you play and everything, but sometimes you just need a little bit of last night wasn't good enough or whatever, and it was like skills development and music.
Well, I found the description of why Joseph Woll's not playing tonight to be somewhat unique. I mean, again, and I said
is that what you're going to call it, unique?
Yeah, I mean, we'll play it here in a second. Berube explained it, and it comes off the heels of me yesterday raving about how I love the fact that he's playing and battling every single night. Because, Noodles, you've talked about it for almost 15 years with me that, yes, statistics are important, and you've got to make stops, and all that kind of stuff, of course, is important. But I think his welcome to the NHL week has actually been in the last week for Joseph Woll, because there were no questions he was playing. He battled hard. He gave them opportunities. He made huge stops to either hold the lead or keep them in games at multiple times over the last week. And it was like routine. It's like, we need you. You got to play. It was a true, starters mentality. Like, no one's questioning who's playing. And now you got Columbus tonight, and they don't play again until Saturday at Ottawa. Dennis Hildeby will get the start tonight. Joseph Woll didn't practice yesterday. They kept him off the ice. He wasn't, I believe, on the ice today. And here's how Craig Berube described the reasoning behind Hildeby going tonight.
Woll's had a lot of work, a lot of emotional games, I would say, Montreal, Tampa, big games and emotional games, a lot of work. So, just with the schedule and everything, just time for Hildeby to get in there.
Emotional games. I don't think I've ever heard a coach describe it that way. And again, it gets back to the playoffs. Every game is so emotional in the playoffs.
That's where I go, Hayes. It's what are we going to do after game 3 of a playoff series? I'm going to give him a break tonight. It's emotionally spent.
A lot of emotion game 3 the other night.
Yeah,
I don't know about that one.
I read that too before we came on. And I
don't think that's helpful.
You know what?
I don't think that one's helpful.
The word unique, you're saying, if you just said, hey, he's played a lot of hockey and a lot of high-intensity hockey or whatever, emotional, the word, that's where we're twisting that word around right now. That's what we're doing. All you could say is, hey, the schedule it's a heavy schedule right now. We're giving Hildeby. Did love Hildeby's last game against Columbus. Could have given an opportunity to get back at it.
Right, exactly.
Against the team that beat you 6-1. Was it 6-1? Something like that. It was an ugly score. So to me, you could have gone the other way and said, you know what, Hildeby, this was a scheduled start. Joseph played a lot of hockey. You know what, give him an opportunity to get some work in or some rest. That's it. And Craig's not a guy to mince words. The emotional starts. They were. That's a tough start.
Sure it is. But I'm surprised it's coming from Craig Berube, because it just doesn't seem like something that he would necessarily attack that way.
I don't even think anything of it in the moment where it's like rest or emotional games or whatever. All I want to know is I bring it to the future, which is 2-3 months from now. It's like, is this guy ever, if it's decided it's him to start the playoffs, A, can he play a bunch of games in a row? Yeah. And B, stay healthy? Can he play good for a long stretch, and can he stay healthy? Because we all know the playoffs is every other night. If they want to go all the way, it's 2 months. So you look at this and you're like, how could that even be possible?
Well, I mean, I guess to be fair to the Leafs is that we're not in the playoffs yet. It is January. He has played well. But we're not going to get that answer until we get there. There's two things that we are going to debate endlessly between now and the beginning of the playoffs that we're not going to get answers to until they actually play it out. And that is, what is the goaltending going to look like? Who's going to play? How are they going to play? How reliable are they going to be? And what are the big players going to play like? That's going to be, I can tell you, I can forecast what it's going to be about. Yes, there'll be combinations of chats about who's going to be on what line, and is the special teams good enough right now, and what do they do at the trade deadline, and how do those players mix in? All of that kind of stuff will absolutely be a part of it as well. But when the dust settles and we get to game 1, it's going to be who's in net, how's he going to play, how can we rely on that guy? I'm speaking of Leaf fans. And secondarily, maybe even actually on par, probably is and probably should be, will Matthews, Marner, Nylander finally say, screw it, we've learned enough, we've done it enough, we're not failing again. We're going to be so good and so dominant that jump on our backs and we're going. Those are the two topics. It's not going to change between now and the beginning of the playoffs. So they'll use the next 2 or 3 months to prepare for that. And, as you get closer to the deadline, we had Jonas on yesterday, and Jonas was teasing, his article in The Athletic with Chris Johnston about, the 10 centers that they believe the Leafs should be going for.
Did that come out today?
It did come out today.
Why wouldn't he just say that centers, like teasing it? You're on a show as a guest, just like, what the hell is he doing?
I don't. I'm going to have a conversation with Jonas.
Yeah,
I love Jonas. He's a dear friend of mine. I've known him forever.
Yes.
You can't be coming on the show and not giving us something.
Right.
You can tease it because we'll promote it for you. And here's the thing. The list, very good list, very well written, very detailed. I read it this morning. None of it is unique to what other people are already suggesting. They have Ryan O'Reilly as the number 1 target. Everyone's buzzing about that. We'll get into it. Brock Nelson at 2, Yanni Gourde at 3. What I found intriguing is they had Trent Frederick at 4, Charlie Coyle at 5, both of the Bruins. I just don't see the Bruins in a position where they're going to sell, and if they do, that they're going to sell to the Maple Leafs.
Well, isn't this
Frederick's
what is this list? Like 1 through 10, is that based on like they should get or available?
That was kind of how it was described, like the likelihood of it happening, and also meshing it with what would be the perfect fit. And listen, the way they described O'Reilly, I would absolutely agree with. I don't know if he wants to come back here. I don't know. Nobody really knows. Only Ryan O'Reilly knows that, and I'm sure Brad Treliving knows by now. He probably knew when he left, how he felt, and he might know how he feels about the idea of coming back. He's got this year and 2 years after it, and he's a really good player. And he's a winner, and he won with Craig Berube. He won a Conn Smythe with Craig Berube. And he steps in, and he's a middle 6 center winger that can do it all, and you can rely on him. I can totally accept that. Now, what the price would be is where the Leaf fans would all of a sudden start getting uncomfortable, because it would cost you a lot. Like, it's going to cost you a lot to get a Ryan O'Reilly or a Brock Nelson, who was number 2 on that list. Yanni Gourde, I don't think nearly as much.
How about number 9 on that list?
Nazem Kadri in Calgary? Is that who it was?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
There's lots of years and money left on that, isn't there?
There's 3 years at 7. I mean, you'd need to be very creative, but I mean, I think that's a pie-in-the-sky wish list, as far as getting him back. But he is the type of player that you need,
Man,
really.
Nas coming back to Toronto, like O'Reilly coming back would be cool, but he was here for such a short period of time. And he never felt like a Maple Leaf, right?
Nas would be a vibe.
Nas, like the idea of Kadri returning it would not be Wendell Clark-esque. It would not be the same hype. Like when Wendell returned to the Gardens in the 90s, it was absurd. When Gilmore was acquired at the deadline, and he never got to play in Toronto, which is still sickening that he got hurt that game in Calgary, that was something else. Like, man, they reacquired Dougie Gilmore, and he's coming back, and it's going to be amazing. Right. Nas would be a step below that, but it would be wild. I really think the vibe in the city and the vibe down at the rink, put the cap aside, put all that kind of stuff, which has to be considered if you're Treliving clearly.
If we're just talking a vibe
trade. If you're talking a vibe check and fans saying, man, they got Nazem Kadri coming home, and Nas is back, and I have a pretty good idea that he would love to be a Maple Leaf. That doesn't mean he loves being a Flame. He loves being a Flame. He's committed to Calgary. That's not. Yeah. I'm not reporting like, hey, Nas is.
I think he'd be down with the vibe
I think he'd
himself.
be pretty cool with it.
All we're doing is talking about this list. The only crazy thing is what if he hit somebody head first on the boards for a 3rd time?
Game 2 in Boston in the same corner.
Because wasn't that the same corner?
Exact same corner.
Same place, same corner, which is insane still to talk about. But
don't throw that mojo out in the air where it's a positive story. The idea of Nazem Kadri returning.
I'm joking. We're talking about this is a list that Jonas made up.
And Chris Johnston. CJ's also on the show. I don't remember CJ.
Collaboration, they say.
Collaboration? Okay, I didn't know that. Right. But I mean, this is pie in the sky, and we talked about it. It's wish list, all of that type of stuff. I still think, isn't Trent Frederick he's a winger?
He's a combo kind of.
He's a combo. He's a really interesting. He's an interesting player.
Yeah, he's not having a great year. No one really is in Boston, but he is tough. A tough and playoff performer. He burned them last year. Yeah, remember he burned them a couple of different times.
But there's lots of guys on that list. you could see and make a case for that would help. Just depends on what the cost of doing business is for them. Like
Absolutely.
I think I said to you guys, the Lawton kid out of Philadelphia I really liked. I don't know if I said that off air.
I love that guy too.
He's on this list. They got him at 7, Scott Lawton.
How
is he at 7 and Trent Fredericks at 4?
Well, I guess Frederick's got a lower cap and he's a UFA at the end of the year.
And I think Frederick brings a unique a skill set, because he's got skill, he could skate, but he's tough as nails. Like he crosses over to, into that Tom Wilson territory where he can handle big bodies and stand up. And it's rare to have a guy who plays in the top 6 like that, right? Like I watched that Washington game last night. Those guys, Edmonton deserved to win. I think the chances were like 22-10 or something. But Washington gets it done, and they've got a massive team, like physically.
Yeah, they're big boys. And Logan Thompson again, man. Like that's going to be the Canadian reaction. Again, it's not. It'll be disingenuous because it's not the same timeline. But we just went through it with the juniors. Why didn't you bring the best players? Why didn't you bring Logan Thompson? Has been the best goalie, arguably in the league, the last month and a half. Like his stats would indicate that. It's not. He doesn't lose. He wins every single night. The guy's been incredible, and he's, a Canadian.
It was just an unsexy name, that's why.
Yes.
It's almost you can't talk yourself into believing he's that good. It's Logan Thompson. Didn't he play in the Canadian University League or something?
No, but what it is he doesn't have there's not a lot of history there. Like it's not like he has 300 games in the league. So you're going, okay, Logan Thompson was brought in, free agent into Vegas, played really, really well, made the All-Star game, but he got hurt. And then they had Larry Brossoit there. They had 5 that brought in Jonathan Quick. They had all these goaltenders there. Aiden Hill ends up winning the cup. But Logan Thompson and Aiden Hill are like best buddies because they're both Calgary guys or Calgary area guys. And Thompson's a goalie. Like I watched him the other night.
He's playing great.
And he's a lefty, which kind of jams up guys too. There's only 4 lefties in the league. 2 of them play for Washington, which is, Charlie Lindgren's the other guy.
There you
go. It's pretty interesting. But he's been awesome, and you're right, Hayes. The argument is he's doesn't have a sniff with the Canadian team at 4 Nations, and if the goaltending struggles, you're going, that guy's Canadian.
How did he not make the team? Exactly. And at a minimum, if I'm Logan Thompson, I'm thinking, okay, the Olympics. I just got to play I got to play through this, have a good playoff run, and put myself on the radar for next year. But yeah, it's quite something the way he's playing. And Washington went in there and beat Edmonton last night. Vancouver lost to Buffalo last night. They were up 2-1 too. Yeah, man. Vancouver lost, Ottawa lost, but Montreal with a great win, and there's a lot
Buffalo
going on.
Sabres at home, that's something you got to.
That one hurt.
Yeah,
that one hurt last
that's
night.
like bogeying the easiest par 5 on the course when the rest of the field is making birdies and eagles. It's
that's
like
right.
You just can't do it.
And you're 100 yards out too, laying 2.
No, you're on in 2.
On in 2, and you 4-putt.
You're Echeverria in Hawaii.
Yeah,
you're on in 2.
That's right, because that's what it was. They were up 2-1 at home against Buffalo. You've got to close. And Demko didn't love his game. He hasn't loved the season so far. Obviously, he had the injury. We'll get to that a little bit later on. Frankie Corrado will join us. Jason Strudwick today. We've got role play level of concern, and we're teeing up Leafs Columbus tonight. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Role play level of concern in about an hour. Jason Strudwick coming up. We'll see if Struddy is still shedding tears over McDavid's 3-game suspension. And McDavid spoke to the media today. Said, hey, it is what it is. I thought it was too much, but you got to move on.
Dude, what was with the mall protest? Like, what was that
freaking out, you mean? Like in Edmonton?
Yeah, in Edmonton. People were protesting at West Edmonton Mall. Like what is that?
What the hell are they going to do?
I don't know, man.
It's I don't know. Don't get me started on protesters, but I mean, it's just insanity. People, obviously that market is pissed.
Of course.
Of course, it's the best player in the world, 3 games. I still think it's weird for people to be like, well, he should withhold his services to play for Team Canada. Don't do anything for the league. I don't know. I kind of just think It's
they
ridiculous.
didn't protest at the mall. I have to come clean. Doogie said it was a fake story I read.
I was going to say, man, I thought we were joking about that yesterday. Like,
Yeah.
we brought
I
that
saw
up
a
in
picture
joking
of a
manner.
bunch of people with Oilers shirts on Twitter
Okay.
at the mall, and someone tweeted they're protesting at the mall, and I'm like, that is crazy,
That
man.
would be a wild story. Like, I
My
need boots on
bad.
the ground.
That's why we're not insiders. I'm not
but-
an insider.
Yeah.
There
That's
was no protesting at the mall.
And also, wouldn't you protest at the rink? Like, why would you bother people in West
No,
Edmonton?
you don't protest anywhere.
No,
'cause
I understand
it's not
that.
gonna do anything.
But if you're going to be goofy enough to protest a suspension to a player who's going to be fine, Connor's going to be all right, wouldn't you do it at the rink? And maybe that was what happened last night. Maybe the guy with the
I
nachos.
honestly thought the number that would cause
the guy
this
with the-
kind of outrage would be 5 or 6.
Right.
I didn't think 3 games would cause this kind of outrage.
Well, again, I think the
I think-
nachos.
yeah.
I think the nachos being thrown on the ice last night. My read on that was that's a protest. That's a nacho protest towards the league.
But it's the nachos.
Well,
no.
if you were watching the game, like Draisaitl, like they were all over Draisaitl. There was a whole plate of nachos. So if you watch after the goal, Logan Thompson is pointing to the nachos saying, that distracted me because like Perry fans out for that one-timer, he actually goes around the nachos. I don't think he saw it, but the nachos were there, and I think it did kind of distract like Thompson going like, what is that? And all of a sudden it's by himself. But I saw the most clever thing on Twitter last night. It said goal by Perry, assist nachos, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, that I don't know. I don't know what to make of that last night. But anyway, here's Frankie Corrado. Frankie, have you ever been involved in a game where someone's thrown nachos on the ice?
No, never seen anything like that. I was playing in the playoffs in Utica, and they were crazy down there. There was a guy with a prosthetic leg, and every time we scored a goal, he would take it off, pour his beer in it, and then chug the beer out of the prosthetic leg and stand up and wave it to everyone else in the crowd. That was wild, but that never made its way onto the ice.
Wow,
That's
commitment.
a wild scene.
That's a fan. That's
Buddy,
a
that's
true
upstate
fan.
New York. Like, you want to talk about gritty? Upstate New York, the Paris of upstate, but real gritty.
Yeah, that's Cooperstown vibes, man. I got going on it yesterday. We're road trip to Cooperstown. What's that course out there? Leather Stock or something like that? There's some
Leather
Stone.
Stocking Golf and Country Club.
Oh,
Yeah.
but what about Turning Stone, just outside Syracuse? I think Tigers played there.
Okay, I love
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
there's that famous one upstate New York in Rochester too. They just had was it the U.S. Open there, or the PGA? What's the name of that one? Rory's. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But that is commitment, man. That is commitment. Taking the prosthetic leg off and chugging beers every time they score. And yeah, we saw the nachos last night, and I'm assuming nothing was thrown on the ice in Montreal. You were calling that Habs game last night, and man, they're buzzing. They are buzzing. They responded well to Saturday night. They beat the Rangers on Sunday, and then they beat Tampa last night in regulation. And you wake up in Montreal today, and they're in a playoff spot.
It's very interesting, man. 13-3-1 in their last 17, and they had the day off on Monday, and then so Tuesday morning we show up to the rink. We're kind of expecting a whole team skate, and it's a very lightly attended optional. And it kind of dawned on me, like, these guys have been on the road so much since the Christmas break, and the schedule's been such a grind, so much so that Sunday's game against the Rangers was the first time in almost, I want to say 3 weeks, that they didn't have to get on a plane to play a game. And there's been a lot of games in that stretch. And so the result of that was a really sleepy first period. Like, there was not a lot of energy, not a lot of juice in the game. They were kind of just a step behind it. The penalty kill kept them in it. And then it was like they just kind of shot out a cannon from there. Like, all of a sudden they found it. Tampa looked a little bit slow. Vasilevsky looked a little shaky, like he lets in the one from the sharp angle by Slavkovsky, and then Evans kind of beats him with a little bit of a knuckler, and another pretty gritty effort where, you know, they had that Sunday against the Rangers. 4 times they came from behind and eventually won. Didn't play with the lead until 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in the game last night. There's something, you talk about vibes, man. There's some kind of vibe going on with that group, but like, it's not a fluke, it's not an accident. They are like they have found something within that group.
Yeah, they really have. And the goaltenders, you know, this Dobes guy, and like his commentary after the game on Sunday, I believe it was, right after the Rangers win, where that was his first home start at the Bell Center, and he played to the crowd brilliantly, and I'm assuming that was organic. He may have been helped out, but talking about the greatness of Montreal and the history and the fans and how awesome it was, like, you can't ask for anything better than that, because he's been a revelation for them ever since they put Primo on waivers. Like, this kid's shown up. He's been great. Montebo's been pretty good at times, really good at times, and they kind of have this two-headed monster, and I'm sure people in Montreal are loving that idea, because that's the best way to chip away at a playoff spot, is make sure you get good goaltending.
Well, think about this. He's played 5 games. He's got 5 wins. That's 10 points that you maybe weren't budgeting for. Like, 10 points in this, span of the season. That's massive, in the grand scheme of things. And so, you're probably not getting those 10 points realistically with when Primo was in the net. And this guy, like, now, the way the hype train starts. It's the same way in Toronto as it is in Montreal. It's like, oh, maybe Dobes should be the starter, and they got to give him a run of consecutive games. But, and then last night, Montebo has a nice bounce-back performance where he was getting peppered early in that game. And he kind of showed signs of the goalie that he was, right after he got named to the Canadian Four Nations team. So it's a good situation in net. And I think if you look at Dobes, you say this guy got us 10 points that weren't in the budget. And that's found money. Those are bonus points. And that's why you sit there in a playoff spot today. And, I come back to this, like, it's not an accident. And Marty St. Louis had an interesting quote early in the season when they were struggling. They were giving up goals left, right, and center. And he was asked about a number of things, but his one quote was, "I'm not looking for a Band-Aid solution. So if it gets worse from here, I don't care, as long as we come out the other side, feeling better as a group." And, like, you can honestly say, when you go 13-3-1 over your last 17, there wasn't a Band-Aid solution there. Like, they've figured it out, whatever was ailing them defensively, and now they're one of the highest scoring teams in the last month in the NHL. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that, but Line A adds that. The star players are playing really well, and it's a good situation in Montreal.
Frankie, could you pull your crystal ball out? I don't want to put you on the spot. We were talking about how tight the race is in the East with the wild card. Do you see them there at the end of the day when it's all said and done?
There's a very good chance, like you and I were talking about this not too long ago. Like,
Frankie,
this
yes
could
or
be
no
the year.
question. Yes or no question.
I'll give you a yes. No problem. I'll give you a yes. And if you're giving me yes or no, I'll take the yes, just because think about what they've had to do since the Christmas break, all the teams they had to beat on the road. Like, this is the part of the schedule that was going to sink them. Florida, Tampa, Vegas, Colorado, Washington, Dallas. They won all those games on the road. Like, that's kind of what can cave you in, and they made it through that. So if they've kind of come out the other side, and there's still going to be some hard games for them, and they're going to have to stay healthy just like everyone else. But I would lean more towards yes than no, and I would even put Ottawa like right there with them and say, like, Ottawa might be that team that's just a step above all the teams in the wild card race right now. And it's crazy to think that, like, there could be 5 teams from the Atlantic making the playoffs, and the Bruins might not be one of them.
Frankie, do they have to be careful with Dobes as far as playing him, like maybe a market correction on him? What I mean by that is Marolinen's come back down to earth a little bit in Ottawa. They've got Montembeault to go to. Ullmark isn't, close to playing yet. I still think he's another week or two. So, Ottawa may have to go to Forsberg. What do you make on Dobes? Do you think it's adrenaline early on, or do you think he's really a tender and they're going to ride him?
He's a tender, but he's not a 1.65, 9, 40 save percentage goaltender. Like, that's it's so hard to do. It's impossible to do that over the long run. So there is going to be a market correction, and he is getting a little bit of that. I'm naive, new in the league, and all that. The way that works, right? Like, you don't overthink things, and you're just kind of in the moment, and everything's new, and you're there and enjoying it. But I don't know. With 5 games into his NHL career, he has shown signs that he can, battle. He's shown signs that he can bounce back. I thought his last game was pretty telling, the one against the Rangers, where he looked. It was the first time he looked jittery and he looked a little bit nervous. And it was actually the first game that he had played at home. And so, you want to put on a good show, like regardless of how much you read out there, you kind of get the vibe that people are talking about you, and there's a little bit of buzz. You can't avoid it in a city like Montreal. And he battled through that, and he settled into that game. So if he can do that once, you just hope that he can do it a little more consistently. But he's not a 165, 940 goaltender. There will be somewhat of a market correction, but if he keeps it within reason, they're still going to get points around him. But you're right, like it is similar to the Levi Marilainen, where like nothing could beat the guy, and like he's at some point he's going to have a game where everything goes in. It's just a matter of how do you bounce back after that? Can you forget about it, or do you dwell on it and let it snowball from there?
With Frankie Corrado, the other end of the Atlantic is where the Leafs have been standing for the majority of the season as the top seed, and they've got a few point buffer on Florida right now. How do you project the top end of the division playing out? Do you think the Leafs can and will hold on to that one seed, and if so, how beneficial could that be for them come playoff time?
Yeah, I see them hanging on to it. Why not? Like they've kind of. We talk about it all the time where it's like, yeah, it's a little more of a boring style of game, but maybe it's more conducive to success in the playoffs. And like they're still showing that. But if the offense ever explodes the way it can, and even the way we saw it go on Saturday, where everything goes in, and then they follow that up on Monday against Tampa Bay, it's like that's the nice combination that the Leafs can have moving forward. And if that's going to be the case, Tampa's doesn't look like a team that's going to charge up the leaderboard. Florida is what they are. They're just a team you don't want to play in the playoffs. And so with that being the case, getting first place in the Atlantic is probably going to give you, the top wild card team, because Washington, it doesn't seem like they're slowing down, and they're the second highest scoring team in the NHL right now. So yeah, it is beneficial. Although the Leafs play really well against Tampa. Like we were talking to Dave Randorf and Brian Engblom last night before the game, and I was like, what is it with the Leafs and Tampa? Like, why can't Tampa beat them? And it's a good question. For some reason, whether it's like the star guys or the matchups, it doesn't go well for Tampa against Toronto. So it's nice to win the division, give yourself an opportunity, but we've seen this team have the easy road before and not be able to get it done. So at the same time, it's like, what does it even matter? Just win in the first round of the playoffs. Doesn't matter, like, if it's the easy road or the hard road.
Frankie, in your tour throughout the league, watching different centermen, our good friends and colleagues Jonas and Chris Johnston put out a list of available centermen, not free agents, just guys that could be available via trade for the Leafs. Do any kind of stick out? I'm sure you're aware of the different names that are available.
Yeah, I saw the list, and you and I did a quiz back a couple weeks ago with the Carolina game, and some of those names were on the quiz. I said Ryan O'Reilly because he's familiar with the team. He can give you a little scoring punch more.
But Frankie, what about the idea that he had an opportunity and he said no already? Like, he could have came back. Like, doesn't that factor into you deciding that that's your guy?
It's hilarious, though. Yes, it does, for sure. But we're almost like, it's like we're playing fantasy hockey. We're almost just operating under the pretenses that, like, yeah, this guy just wants to come back. Or, you know what I mean? Which is not always the case. You're right. And so if that's the case, like if he doesn't want to, or the cost is too high, then my initial thought is I want someone who can buzz around and bring a little speed to the table. Like, O'Reilly's not speedy, but my first priority would be the offensive punch. Outside of that, like, whether it's Lawton, or I heard you guys talking about Trent Frederick, like, that would be my next kind of priority. Like, add a little speed into the lineup and see if they can find a little offense, at the right time, those guys. But yeah, you're right. Like, we can't just assume someone wants to come back, especially given that they had the chance, and there's term left on that deal. So that makes it more expensive to bring in that type of player. And I know there's term for Lawton as well, but just a different type of player. The costs, should be different.
Well, I saw Kevin Cheveldayoff, GM of the Jets, speaking to the media in Winnipeg about Jonathan Toews, right? And him possibly working towards a return. And Cheveldayoff was pretty blunt about his interest if and when Toews decides that he wants to return to the NHL.
Was he like hands off? That's my guy.
I would think so. I mean, he's a Winnipeg guy, right? Toews is from Winnipeg, and obviously, you know who he is and what he represents. You talk about buzz. We were joking about Kadri returning to Toronto and how the city would respond. I think the idea of Toews signing in Winnipeg would be just remarkable theater. But let's say between now and the deadline, Toews says, I'm back, I'm ready, I know I can play. What kind of pursuit would you expect? The Leafs, Winnipeg? Like, I would think every playoff team in the league would be calling him and just begging him to accept the deal, wouldn't you think? Like, you wouldn't have to pay him a ton and give it a crack and see what he's got.
Yeah, for sure. I just want. It's been 2-3 years since he's played. I mean, I know he's one of the, he's so beloved and was so good in the playoffs and won and all that kind of stuff. Is there not just part of you that is like, this guy's going to join the team potentially in March, or right before the trade deadline, and we're expecting him to turn back the clock right away? Like, I still would be a little bit skeptical of that, and so if that's the kind of way you want to throw your eggs into that basket, that's fine. But you're putting a lot of faith in a guy that hasn't played in a little while, and you're just not sure what you're going to expect. So I don't know. I'm sure every team that's looking for a centerman is going to pick up the phone and they're going to do their due diligence. And maybe it's one of those things where I don't even know if you can do this CBA wise, but can you do the old football kind of where you bring him in, skate him, see what he's got, and then kind of say, okay, we'll call you in a week once we make up our mind. I don't even know if that's a thing you can do, but I think there would still be a little skepticism just because it's March. If this was happening in September, or you had the whole off season, you have training camp, you can ramp up, totally different story. But the timing of it seems like it would be hard for him to get up to speed. I don't know where he's at, but that's where my first thought goes.
Yeah, and that's reasonable for sure. All right, Frankie, we'll let you get on that plane. Safe travels. We'll do it again soon.
Okay, boys. I actually brought my shorts and flip-flops because I'm heading to the Hot Pocket, Detroit.
Ooh,
so,
wow. Very hot pockety down there.
Yeah, I'll be trading in the parka I'm currently wearing for the sandals and flip-flops in a few hours.
I love it. Enjoy the balmy weather down there. Say hi to everyone for us, and thank you for doing this.
Yeah, boys.
There's Frankie Corrado.
What's the sample size of a guy? I think Teemu Selanne did it. Justin Williams did it. But what's the sample size of a guy being dynamite and really kind of helping you out?
For Toews, you mean? Listen, I think the skepticism is 100% warranted because he hasn't played in so long. But I think you balance it with you don't have to trade anything for him, and it doesn't cost you anything.
Right. And he doesn't have to be your guy. He can play fourth
line. And it's Jonathan Toews.
And it's Toews, exactly. If he's anything close to what he was 3 years ago, and he's on your fourth line costing you nothing.
Yeah, you got to be thinking,
compelling.
Even if this guy's kind of bad, he's probably a pretty damn good third-line centerman.
That's what you're hoping for.
And keep in mind, where did Kevin Cheveldayoff start his managerial career? He was the AGM in the Chicago system, right? Mm. So he has a long history with Jonathan Toews. I would think he has the inside track.
It wouldn't surprise me. And again, I think Dregg's reported recently, I think he said on our show, it's more likely Toews would return for next season as opposed to between now and March. But if you start ramping up and you're an athlete and he's not a young guy, you're putting in all this work, I could see him thinking, man, I got the motor revving here. I want to play.
How old would he be? Is he 36, 35?
Yeah, he's in his mid-30s. I think he was drafted in 2006. He's 36. Yeah. So, not a young guy, and he would understand that. Jason Strudwick will join us in about 15 minutes. Role play level of concern at 5:30. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Jason Strudwick coming up. Role play level of concern. Get Struddy's take on, obviously, the McDavid suspension, how Edmonton played last night. I'm sure it's cold out there. I haven't checked the weather. It's amazing the amount of people from around the country that they hear us talking about how cold it is in Toronto and Southern Ontario, and I'm getting it from everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, DMs, you're so soft, you wouldn't understand what it's like out here. I'm like, dude, I get it. I understand. It's very cold in a lot of different places.
Even our good friend and colleague Jesse Pollock had to chime in and say, everyone talks about how cold it is in Winnipeg. It's minus 30 in Toronto right now.
That's right.
Thank you, Jesse, for that update.
Thank you for stepping up, and he's right on that. And I had a rude awakening on how cold it was this morning. I don't know if this applies to you guys. We get the Blue Box picked up every week, right, Wednesday mornings, and 50 weeks out of the 52 in the year, this thing comes around the corner at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. It's always in the afternoon. It's always an afternoon pickup. So last night I'm like, it's too cold. I'm not putting the Blue Boxes out. I'll do it in the morning. I got to get the kids to school. I'll come back, throw it out there. Sure enough,
today the guy came at 7 a.m.
The guy's buzzing around the corner. I run out, flip-flops and a T-shirt.
I saw that today too. I can't believe you're saying that.
Yeah.
7 a.m. this guy wheels around.
Chasing the guy down the street with 2 Blue Boxes. I'm like, you got to get these, man. My garage is a disaster. We got too many things going on here. And I'm having a stop and chat with the guy, the Blue Box guy, at 7:45 in the morning.
Yeah.
In a T-shirt.
Ridiculous.
I also, when we come back, Hayes, at 5, I want to ask you, because you used to be a pizza expert, didn't you, when you were a monster?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Well, when we come back, I want to ask about some conduct I saw with pizza that I'm just like, unnecessary.
Okay.
But you can fill me in.
I'll give you my expertise. I have a PhD in this, evidently. Hour 2 coming up. Struddy will join us. Role play level of concern. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.